Howdy, y'all. So, it is time for another video. And today I would like to talk to you about skeptics and atheists, why they are delusional, and why we should stop entertaining anything they're freaking saying. That's my makeshift title for now. We'll see what we actually end up talking about, but that's what my notes are about. So, I meant to actually make this video sort of continuing on the same theme of my last one about walking in the spirit and not the flesh, because I still feel that very, very strongly and am seeing it everywhere. And um, maybe this will be sort of like a multiple series thing, and um, maybe this is just the flesh part that I'm talking about today, and why the flesh, just can't be trusted or something. Because I've been really thinking about how people who are skeptical of the Bible in particular, or who find themselves to be enemies of that particular book and religion rather than all the other ones, because it's really the only one to deal with, let's be honest. Um, it's the one that is claiming the most authority. So naturally, even if you didn't believe that all of the if you believe that all the religions were made up, you've got one that's saying, well, but this one is true, and it surpasses all the other ones. So, uh, logically, if you were to sort of topple religion, you got to deal with the one that is claiming the most authority. So, and I get that, do what you got to do. But I've been thinking a lot about just these particular people, and I don't know, watching just little clips of debates, which is really just debilitating, first of all, because you're watching Gen Z, you know, bring up the same arguments that you grew up hearing. And it's like, oh my gosh, we got to keep doing this. But, God doesn't get tired of doing this. Like, every generation, he's trying to find some way to show himself strong to people. And which the good news is he does seem to be doing that as well. Like if you go on TikTok, there's a lot of really, um, there's people getting radically saved that weren't before, and had hundreds of thousands of followers, and now suddenly talking about God or whatever, and so stuff like that. But I just was watching it recently, and I started to really be like, the the back and forth is just, it's too much, because they'll say one thing. It's like there's this passage. There's a Gospels passage where Jesus is saying, like, okay, so John the Baptist came and he didn't do any drinking. He lived an ascetic life, and y'all had issue with that. And then here I come, and I'm, eating and drinking, and y'all got an issue with that. It's like, let me go see what he said about it, first of all. Okay. Sorry, I opened the window so it's a little bit brighter. Okay. So, yeah, the reason why I couldn't remember what he said about it is because he really didn't say much about it, except for, he says, for John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say he is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Wisdom is proved right by her deeds. So the point that he was making, though, is that it's not that they'd said the same thing about John that they said about Jesus. They were saying things, they were finding reasons to dismiss both men. So, but the thing is, John was doing the opposite of what Jesus was doing, and they dismissed him. And then when the supposed balance came, they dismissed that too. So yeah, this I see this a lot, and I was seeing it more recently and being like, no, we need to point this out because this is literally no one should be listening to you after this. Like, you should not be allowed to have a influence on anyone's mind because you are just blindly dismissing anything in any direction. So, like, I think we all heard about how people, they're just dumbfounded by God sending people to hell. And even if you were to answer that question and say, well, God didn't send anybody to hell, blah, 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 that people weren't made from hell, and you make these choices, they will still go down this rabbit hole of, well, okay, but he knows what you're going to do, and he made you to do this, and he made you to do that. So basically, he's forcing certain people to go to hell, or he's causing it, whatever. Okay, but like, you got Christians though that have children, and the Christians have the children, and the children, Christians aren't God. They're people like you, and they have the same fears and insecurities, and they have the same instincts as you do about this. So you got loving God who's sending people to hell, okay, but you got loving parents, Christian parents, who are basically caging their children in so that they don't make the wrong decisions. They're beating them over the head with what they ought to be doing. They are giving them every negative possible consequence they can for doing the bad things. They are kicking them out of the house. They're doing all of these things to reinforce the idea that, the behavior that they're doing is not good. It's not going to lead them, it's leading them to a bad place, and it's going to cause them to, it's just like parents giving every Christian child every negative feedback that they possibly can, because in their mind, they are trying to save their child from hell. Do they like that? Do they like when that happens? No, they don't. They hate that, actually. They hate when you do that. They hate you, Christian parent, when you don't just let your kid live their life how they want to live it. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, so, oh my gosh, God lets evil, he lets the evil run rampant. It's everywhere. Why is there so much evil in the world? Okay, but when God was exacting the judgment out, and you read the record of that, it was, you said it was just crazy, maniacal, killing spree God who's violent. And I was thinking the other day, like I was reading Genesis, but I just came across that story of Abraham, and it just struck me particularly how deep that was, because I never really, that story. I don't know if you know this, but before God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, he went and told Abraham what he was going to do. And Abraham was like, are you really going to destroy the righteous and the wicked together? So, you see Abraham having this same sort of dilemma intellectually that y'all are, except he was a lot more respectful about it. And he was just like, surely you wouldn't do that. And my attitude, even from when I was a little kid, was like, bro, stay out of God's business. Like, what? Don't, question God. Like, but reading it recently, I was like, this is a really profound piece of information that he was able to get out of God. And he really did like risk his life to get it. Like, I don't know, I guess maybe it's kind of like cringy to me to read it. Like, I just never been a big fan of it because I'm like, dude, he just told you, like, if there's 50 people in a city, like, why would you keep going? So he goes, if there's 50 righteous people in the city, will you destroy a whole city? And God said, if there's 50 righteous people, I won't. And then Abraham goes, what about 45? What about 40? What about that? And he gets all the way down to 10, and then he stops. And the entire time, usually I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like cringing. Like, it's because it really is like at any point, God would be like if he gets to 25 and God goes, don't push me, that's like, who wants to hear that? He got all the way down to 10 and he just was like, he stopped at 10. So it could be 8 actually, but Abraham didn't have the courage to go any lower than that. And I don't know anybody else who really would, except for some atheist who's disrespectful, who wouldn't get that answer out of God anyway, because he would just instantly burn to a crisp trying to talk. But yeah, that's a really significant information. God says if there's 10 righteous in a city, he will not destroy that city. So not only is he not going to punish the righteous with the wicked, if there's enough righteous people in the city, he'll keep the whole city there. He will reward the wicked with the righteous. So not only is he not punishing the righteous, he's rewarding, he's treating the entire city as equal on behalf of the few righteous people that live there, which now we hate because now that's too much evil. So, you got places like New York City, places like San Francisco, places that you can see visibly, probably places, those are the places that we know about, we hear something about. We don't hear about some of these places in South America that don't get coverage, that are just murder city, whatever. And you think, well, why is that city still there? Why is God letting so much evil in the world? It's probably 10 righteous people off in there is why. And that's Old Testament. So how much more is he doing that for, after Jesus has basically covered the entire world in redemption, and now it's just a matter of you hearing the news and accepting it. So yeah, we are doing this thing for a long time. Like, let's go back and read the parable of if I can find it now. I gotta find everything manually. Like, thank goodness that I have like decades of Bible reading under my belt, because this computer or this Bible app, I mean, it's good, but I don't know. I guess people are just going to grow up not ever having the skill of being able to just go through and be like, I think it's about somewhere around here, these parts. And they're just going to never know that they could have ever been like that. But the idea of having it and then losing it is really kind of scary. Like, I don't like opening up a physical Bible and being like, that's just an example. I mean, obviously for parables, for the Gospels, you got 4 copies of the same thing. Yeah, you're going to not remember where all the parables were. But I don't know, the idea that it could get that bad, where you're just like, somebody gives you a physical Bible, you're like, what is this? That's pretty scary. Okay, so, this is the parable of the sower. That's not the one I need. I'm looking for the parable of the field. Hold on, let me see. I usually just like I usually use Matthew. Whatever I can find, I usually find it in Matthew. And if it's not in Matthew, I look for Luke. I can usually tell when it comes from John, because John is um, pretty different from the other ones. Anyway, give me a second. And what did I tell you? It's in Matthew. Okay, so the parable of the weeds. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field, but while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servants came to him and said, Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did the weeds come from? An enemy did this, he replied. The servants asked him, Do you want us to go and pull them up? No, he answered, because while you are pulling the weeds, you may uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. At that time, I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds, tie them in bundles to be burned, then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn. Okay, so we see that God is not willing to lose any wheat on account of weeds. So while weeds are very bad, it's worse for him. It's not worth it to get rid of the weeds right away because the wheat might get uprooted. So you let it all grow together until the end. I mean, it's literally right there. So anytime someone has a question about why there's so much evil in the world, they clearly haven't read the Bible, or they don't care to actually be satisfied. Because when it's the opposite way and God is just zippity zapping, and he's never really been like that. But in the Old Testament, after a couple hundred years, it was like, okay, we got to purge this land because, we're coming through. It's like when the Chinese people came to San Francisco, they cleaned the city up. It's kind of like that. Anyways, so then I'm hearing lately, like, these really, really just obnoxious people talking about the inconsistencies in the Gospels and how they, this one says this, but then this one says that, and then this one says this. And the way that they think, they're 20 years old, 25 years old, and you think you've discovered that the Gospels all say different things. And you're just like taken out of the movie. You're just like, well, wait a minute. Like, I've looked at this closely and I notice it, and it's like, it's so obnoxious. Like, this has been around for 2,000 years, but you figured out that these two things don't add up, and what's up with that? It's like, well, what's up with that is that dude was over. It's like, why would they all have the same account? Why would they all have the same account? Well, then why are there, I understand when at one place it says Jesus had a blue sash, and the other one said Jesus had a red sash. And you're like, well, which one was it? Okay. You could puzzle over that all day. But the idea, they're all going to have the exact same story is the most insane thing I've ever heard. Okay, Peter, James, and John were the closest to Jesus. Okay. Matthew's not going to see the same things John saw. Luke was a doctor who's just what we were taught in our school 20 years ago, before anybody was there to freaking care what we were saying, was that Luke got like accumulated stories from eyewitnesses at the time. So, that's why you get sort of his origin story, and you get Mary and Joseph and all that from Luke, because he was actually doing like this autobiographical thing on Jesus. He wasn't a disciple, but that's what he compiled. Like, it's just so strange. Like, they have this idea in their mind of what God ought to do, and if he was like this. And I was going to say this in a different video, but we really got to be careful with the hypotheticals, because when you've got the hypotheticals about how God would do this or he could do this, especially as a Christian, like, you should be completely devoid of hypotheticals if you're a Christian. Either find out what it's like or shut up. There's no reason for you to not know and have to formulate something in your brain. And all that's going to do is put you down this road of idolatry, because you're going to have crafted something. It's like, God would never, have you wear white after Labor Day. God would never, make you laugh in the middle of church. That's destructive. God would, it's like, dude, go find out. Either talk to him personally or go in the scriptures and find where it is and go look for that thing. Don't leave it at would or could, because you're going to start crafting somebody who isn't real. Let the world do that and be confused until they come across it. But as a Christian, you got no business creating hypothetical God guy. That's ridiculous. So either be in the dark. You can say maybe. You can say I don't know. But don't say would or could and then have emotions based on those. That's ridiculous. Anyways, so if the Gospels, so they're all mad because they're slightly different. But if they were exactly the same, they would just say, oh, they copied from each other. Wouldn't they? Wouldn't they do that? It's like these people, like, do you see how unintellectual this is? This is not, they just because it's couched in these terms that are scientific does not make this scientific or intellectual. They are so far from intellect. They're just dodging. And then the last thing is, actually, it's not the last thing, but here's another one. So I was noticing how, like, that when scientists and skeptics and stuff, that, they're highly educated, they go into these fields and they study, something like space or, these, sometimes it's in the biological sciences or whatever, the evolutionary whatevers, but space in particular, because it gets to the point where, because they'll be like, okay, well, our galaxy is this big, and if you go out this many light years, there's a galaxy that's the size of 12 of our galaxies. And then if you go out further, there's 440 billion more galaxies. Like, I don't know, but that's what the numbers are like. It's like, it gets to the point where it's like, okay, like, it's so big, it's so vast, it's so beyond what you can comprehend, that you're just like, you can't really formulate an emotion about it. You're just like, all right, like, oh, it's like these numbers that are like 10 to the 52nd. It's like, okay, like you just have to go with it. It's like, what am I going to do? Try to contemplate that? And it gives you this feeling that whoever created that is just as impersonal as the information. It's like they can't reconcile that, the vastness and the bigness and all of that stuff, and the vacuum and the darkness of space, with what's in the word, and how it's so kind of viscerally involved with human affairs, down to like what you eat. And they say they just can't, they can't. But like, there's something about God, like, if you read the Bible, you can see, yes, he is involved in, how you carry yourself religiously, how you relate to other people, how you treat your children, how you treat your animals, how you eat your food, how you, treat diseases, get rid of your waste, all of this stuff, which is in large part about his people. And it's like, okay, here's what we're going to do. And a lot of it was symbolic of things to come, and a lot of it was just like teaching them certain things. And all of this comes with, just learning and reading and getting acquainted with the information. This isn't something that you're going to someone's going to be able to just download to you off top. But also, we do see God thinking in these very large terms, just the way that he treats prophecy. I was just thinking about this the other day. It's like if you use the Bible as the way that you come to expect how prophecy is going to work, what it's looking like is that someone's going to prophesy something. It's going to be 300 years down the road before that even resembles, before the thing that happens. And when it does happen, you're not even going to know that was the thing until after it's over. So this idea of like, oh, well, he's going to predict the future. No. Like, it's almost like the thing isn't even for the people involved, for any of them. Because even though he says, this is to prove who I am, but look how he's proving it. Not like next year you're going to be pregnant, even though there are some sort of short-term things like that. When you think of something like Jesus, which is like the biggest information that he ever dropped, okay? He gave that to Isaiah. Hundreds of years later, Jesus is born. When he is born, no one goes, oh my gosh, this is it. No one does that. It's only after the fact that they even see the pattern to see that is what Isaiah was talking about. So it's this huge, there's this vastness of God where he doesn't mind if whole generations perish before the thing he says, and that the thing that you were trying to prove about him never happens. And then you just die looking like you were crazy. Like, there is a part of him that I can see, when I look at space, I don't go, well, the God of the Bible didn't create this, because I've actually read the Bible. I don't pick one triggering verse out of the Bible and say, well, that's definitely not this guy. I can see vastness of space God being the same as I'm concerned with what you do in your everyday life, God, because he is balanced. He is, it's a lot of either or with people who don't understand God. It's like either he is this impersonal force and he's just creating. He doesn't care what's going on. Or he, it's just this love and light, and but it's like you were supposed to manifest all this stuff yourself, and you just didn't know it, and he would have come and helped you, but you got caught up in all of these other religions and whatever. But he really is love and light. It's like, no, he's all of the things. He is perfect. So you've got the vast intellect, the vastness of the intelligence, but you also have someone who's we're patterned after, who has all of the personalness and the feelings and the wanting to be relational. And you've got this perfection component that you don't really, you can only guesstimate what that could possibly be. Like, yeah, it has something to do with never doing anything wrong, or but then that contradicts with what of the Bible, where he's doing things that you go, well, how's that just, and how's that whatever. But it's like the way that you think that you can just contain him and go, oh no, I totally get him. It's like, what? You can't even get him from you look at space, you're like, why do you think you could totally get this guy, whatever he is? So, but we can see, so like Christians can see that sort of hands-on, very close, but also very big picture, like bigger than the biggest picture type of God figure. And so when the God of the Bible shows those traits, the big picture traits, they can't stand it. They're like, well, how is that? It's really crazy. It's like, if you try to point out the big pictureness of God that matches what you see in this, in space, in the heavens, in science or whatever, um, they hate it. They're like, well, what's loving about that? It's like, okay, I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, he matches your world. Like, they're not two different people. But um, yeah, it's like he is both genius and personal. Like, in life, you typically don't see people who are geniuses who also have a great grasp on human relations. Like, it's really hard to even picture what that looks like. Um, and they certainly don't think it has anything to do with some guy in Nazareth doing miracles. But again, genius. God is a genius. And they don't think that certainly humility and all of these traits of the spirit have anything to do with all the anything that on this earth where the men made great strides and did this and that. It was usually not humility driving them. It was ambition and um, yes, intellect, but they are, also you typically had to deal with the destructive nature of geniuses um, if you were going to partake in any of the ideas and benefit from any of that. That's what we know about on earth. And um, God is not like that. In a way, he is, in the sense of, like, there's certain things about God that you just have to trust him. And people don't like that, but it's like, okay, but if a man came and was like, yeah, well, he liked to lock his women in cages at night, but he was a philanthropist. He was a great dancer, and it's just like, really, like, you're doing the same thing for a man. Like, at least God will give you rewards at the end. Like, hey, thanks for trusting me. I know it was tough. Like, I know you, like, so here's some reward for that. Like, I don't know. It's like God is aware of how hard it is. He's aware. And okay, and then one more thing, because this is getting pretty long, but um, like, I started reading this book about near-death experiences, and you know, I'm a big near-death experience person, but I just was thinking about that again. I was just hearing more things about people, the medical personnel just sort of dismissing these people, and it was just like, this is so obnoxiously absurd. Why are we still entertaining these people? They're not willing to engage, because the near-death experience is the most powerful eyewitness forensic, it's not religious. They can't help it if they saw God and Jesus and light and love and their loved ones. That doesn't make it religious. They died and then they saw some stuff and told you about it. What's religious about that? There's nothing inherently religious about that, just because it's bad news for you, because you were about to just go live your life, and now you've got to think about this thing that you didn't want to think about. That doesn't make it religious. So, time after time, somebody's like, yeah, I was in the operating table. They were on their operating table. Their brain was, whatever. Their temperature was dropped to 50 degrees. Their brain function wasn't working. It was being monitored. They were covered. Like, so they couldn't have seen anything in the room, even if the anesthesia didn't work, all these excuses. It's like, well, their whole thing was covered. Their whole shebang was covered. So what did they see out of where they saw themselves on a table covered? It's like, they're not even willing to hear from people who have no skin in the game. It's like, well, we should just stop. Like, why should we continue to respect this? They are getting in the way of the real information, and they're causing lots of people to have problems getting the real information out that they swear up and down that they really want to know. And that's the other thing. Like, we think that this is intellectual, and I think it all comes back to this. I won't say all, but this mythology of the Enlightenment period. and that somehow science came through and evolution came through and Darwin and them and Freud and all these people came through and just, they make it seem like they came in and they just used science and then they just tipped over the religion. They just tapped it a little bit and the whole thing crumbled to pieces. Like that's the way that they like to say that. I mean, the way that they do that, it's like somebody just bothered at one point bothered to just kind of question it and the whole thing came tumbling down. And that's what they're giving these 18-year-olds and 20-year-olds in college, this idea that happened. And that so didn't happen. First of all, the university, the hospital, the medical field, all of this stuff was started by your boy, the Christians, way before these people came along. And it just like anything else, some Christians, some good men start something out of nothing, start with the blood, sweat, and tears, with all of the the people not believing him, and by the grace of God, by the Spirit of God, something gets built up, and then here come the freaking wicked, non-righteous, non-believers. Okay, we got it. Thank you. We got it from here. Thanks. And then they just degrade the thing till it's gone. Like, Yale and all of in Harvard and all of these places were already founded as universities by Christians because there was a movement of Christians who said, you know what, truth is truth. All truth belongs to God, and we just need to be fostering truth wherever we can foster it. And that's what they did. Like, and then some after that was built on the shoulders of men like that, then here comes some other people saying, oh, you know what, we discovered God isn't real. Actually, because we found a chicken foot and we found another chicken foot 200 years later, and it turns out they've evolved. It's like, what? And then like DNA and all these other things these other things that are continuing to come out to prove that, no, that was the bad, you should have backed that up. And it really points to like what's really holding people back from accepting the truth, because it's not intellect, as I've just proven. It's not lack of evidence, as I've just proven. It is good old pride and good old fear. Because I'll tell you this, one of the things that I've observed in life, it's one of the toughest things that I've ever seen people manage to do. Like the only people that I've ever seen do it are Christians, or people who convert and become Christian. But when you come to a conclusion and that conclusion was faulty, and then you got to go back on that conclusion that you thought was like the grade A conclusion, I've never seen anybody really manage to do that. It's like when you decide to like leave your man that you thought was foul and he was a whatever, and he wasn't treating you right, and then you come to find out later he was a good man and you should have never done that. Like every once in a while you hear some story of some woman who regrets that, but it's like that's incredibly hard to do. It's incredibly hard to do. You almost never see any human do that. They just double down and they say, no, it's the best decision I ever made, and I'm so glad that I'm not doing that. Like so yeah, you got a lot of people who have turned their backs on the God of the universe, thinking that they made a great decision. It's incredibly hard to come back from that without having that realization and feeling the love and the security of God again, to think like, oh, I can admit this to myself. I can admit, like, it's like, oh yeah, no, I was totally wrong. That was stupid. Guys, you guys got to follow God. It's like that happens after you feel the love of God. But if that never happens, you're just stuck in your prideful decision and your prideful mask. And most people, they just get stuck in the mask. Especially when you see like these people, these children get up there and they have such arrogance and these goofy questions that they try to pose and try to like get gotcha, these goofy gotchas. And it's like the level of pride that you have already right now over this thing that just like is not going to topple, an anthill, is like you're already on a path where you like if the truth came up and bit you, you probably wouldn't admit it. Now you can get surprised. You get surprised all the time, but it's just like it's more about how the danger of pride and how it will just keep you victimized. It will keep you in a dungeon where you cannot admit, even for the sake of everyone else, that you've messed up. And the other one that is equally as bad and kind of like obvious, but we don't talk about it too much, is fear. Because, when you're already kind of scared of God to a degree, and you kind of should be. I mean, that when you're starting, first impressions would be like, okay, God's pretty scary. And then God reassures you in some way. But it's like, it's scary. And what if you find out that you're not, while you're on the earth, you find out, like, I'm not actually into this at all. I think I'm hellbound. Like, there's got to be some people finding that out, because the Bible says that broad is the road that leads to destruction, narrow is the way that leads to life, and few find it, which means a lot more people are on that broad road. And it doesn't really say that people are refusing to get on the narrow road, but we definitely see that in our lives where people are just like, yeah, no thanks. They're just openly refusing to the things of God because they just don't. It doesn't look like it's going to benefit them at all. So I think a lot of times these people that you talk to them about God and the wheels are turning and they're drawing the conclusion in their brain, like, hey, I don't think you're one. I don't think you're. I don't think you could ever manage this or whatever. So then, but instead of saying that, instead of being truthful, they just start lobbing accusations at God and try to make it seem like it's because they care so much. But it's like, no, you're just scared to death that you're marked for hell. Especially these people that are like, so that's it. Like, I'm just gonna like people. Like, it's always people. It's not I. It's like, so what about these people who do such and such? Are they just going to go? Because they're comparing themselves to this hypothetical person. And if this hypothetical person doesn't have a chance, then they don't have a chance. So it's like, well, what about this? And what about this scenario? What about that scenario? It's like, people are scared. It's scary. But that's why God just says to tell them to just go out and tell the message, because that's all you can do. That's all you have control of. And that's why they hate it, because it's scary to them, or, that pride wraps around them even tighter. So, that's not even counting all of the spiritual stuff that could be going on, demons and whatever attaching to people and whatnot. So that's just the war of the flesh and man's own heart, which is pretty dadgum scary. It's I don't know, like, the devil can deceive, and yeah, he can. I mean, he's got a pretty heavy, powerful machine going, but that human heart, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it is a true miracle when people get saved, because it's like, you just changed? Like, to see a person change, I mean, even the world says people don't change. So when a person does change, which is another thing, it's like, when a person that you've known personally changes, and then they say, oh, they're into that Jesus stuff. It's like, they'll do anything to just ignore. You go through your whole life saying that people don't change. Then you see someone change, and it's like, oh, they're our holy roller now. It's like, and then you just give them a nickname and you dismiss it. It's like, that's not intellectual. This is not an intellectual problem. This is you figuring out a way to not confront this information. And every subsequent person that comes up to you that says, hey, maybe it's time to confront this information, you just hate them. You just hate them, because that's one more notch of accountability that you didn't have before, that you now know that you can't claim ignorance anymore, even further, the more that people come to you. And but the thing is, it's like God is trying to bust through that. That's why he tells the Christians, like, get up and go back. Christians getting stoned outside the city, and he's bringing them back to life. He's like, go back, because God's love is outweighs your stubbornness and your pride and your fear and your arrogance. So, and you would hope that people would notice that people who have absolutely no benefit to doing this job are continuing to do it. But they just find ways to dismiss it, dismiss. Oh, they're brainwashed. Oh, it's this. Oh, they've been told this thing and whatever, or it's fake or whatever. But we're just going to keep doing it until the end. That's all we can do. You got to keep giving the message until the end. And then God's going to give us rewards, because this job is wackadoo. It's wackadoo, but after a while, you do see the simple genius in it, and the fact that this is simple stuff. It's not complicated stuff. God's trying to get people who want to be with him to be with him, and he's going to keep asking you, because his end is done. So now it's just, hey, do you want to come? Are you sure? 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 Are you positive? How about now? How about now? How about now? Until you die. That's what he's doing. And that's all he's doing. So anyway, this was a little bit rambly, but not, because I had my little outline, which I think I'm just going to go back to outlines permanently, because there's just really no reason for me to spread over a 50-minute video being complete nonsense anymore. So back to my trusty outline. Oh, I had these videos I told you about last video about like these examples of things in real life, like wheat being separated from chaff and people separating sheep from goats. I think I might put that link in this description box. I don't know. It doesn't really apply to what I'm talking about, but I don't know if I'll ever get back to that particular topic, so I might just put them in this one so that I can say that I did it and it can be done. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. You didn't need to know that. 48 minutes, not too terrible, but longer than I thought it was going to be. I don't know. I'll talk to y'all later, I guess. We'll see. A lot of, there's still some predictions about, Jesus coming at the very, very, very last minute of the year. So we'll see. But yeah, maybe I'll have another video. Maybe I won't. That's about all I can do, is live day to day at this point, because I still do think that it's going to be pretty soon. But I'm now either way. Like, I like having extra time to do stuff, kind of. But I'm also like, got my bags packed at the door. Like, I got my bag packed. I'm like the pregnant lady, like waiting for the due date, because I'm just like, anytime I'm ready. Doesn't matter. It's in the car. It's not even at the door. It's in the car. So, yeah, that's it. Okay, I'm done. Bye.